Now let us go for the applications of steady flow energy equation. So these applications of steady flow energy equations will be helpful for us when we are solving Rankine cycle, vapor compression, refrigeration, air refrigeration, all these. So in all those applications we will use these components. So the first one, let us consider boiler. So if we consider a boiler, so boiler is like this. So let us say certain amount of water is inside the boiler. Now initially this water possesses certain pressure P1, volume V1 and temperature T1. Now because of temperature this will have some internal energy, and we know that when there is internal energy and pressure and volume for a system, then H is equal to U plus PV. So initially this water possesses certain enthalpy, that is H1 we are considering. So the water enthalpy is H1. Now we are supplying to this boiler certain amount of heat such that this water gets converted to steam. Now when this water is getting converted to steam, this steam possesses certain enthalpy, that is H2. Now boiler doesn't do any kind of work, and as this is a stationary boiler, you can neglect the variation in the potential energy. Then the kinetic energy, as the velocity of the particles will be very less, initial velocity is almost zero because the water is inside the boiler in a stationary position. So the kinetic energy and potential energy components will be neglected here. So initially H1 is the enthalpy with which water is inside the boiler, and we are supplying certain amount of heat to the boiler such that this absorption of heat is causing the production of steam, and this steam will have a greater enthalpy H2. Now from this, the amount of heat supplied Q122 is equal to H2 minus H1. This is the equation that we have to consider for a boiler. So this is the first application that we are considering. Now let us go for the second application. Second application is evaporator. So this evaporator is majorly used in our refrigeration applications. So when you consider an evaporator, so this evaporator coil is like this, and here is the refrigerated space in which certain amount of products are kept. Now the refrigerant enters into the evaporator with certain pressure and temperature. That means the refrigerator is entering into the evaporator at a lower pressure and lower temperature. So this low pressure, low temperature refrigerant enters into this evaporator coil, and as this is at lower pressure, this will absorb heat from the products that are to be cooled. So that means heat is being absorbed from the products that are to be cooled. So as a result of heat absorption, this low pressure, low temperature liquid refrigerant gets evaporated and comes out as, the pressure remains constant in the evaporator, low pressure, low temperature, which will be slightly more than the initial temperature of the fluid entering, or it may be same also. So that all depends upon the condition at which the refrigerant is coming out from the boiler, whether it is coming in saturated state or superheated state. That we will be discussing later. For this instant, let us say at low temperature only the vapor refrigerant is coming out. So low pressure, low temperature liquid refrigerants enters into this evaporator, absorbs heat from the products that are to be cooled, and as a result of that it comes out as low pressure, low temperature vapor refrigerant. See, this vapor will have little higher enthalpy compared to that of the initial enthalpy with which refrigerant is entering. Now if we apply steady flow energy equation for this case, as the fluid is moving simply because of gravity, we can't consider the kinetic energy variations, and the potential energy variations are also negligible here. So simply H1 plus, why we are taking plus here is heat is absorbed by the refrigerant which is considered as a system. Heat absorbed by the system is positive. So H1 plus Q122 is equal to H2. So from this Q122 is equal to H2 minus H1. See, you may ask a question like this, sir, for both boiler and evaporator we are getting the same expression. What is the difference? See, boiler is used usually for high pressure applications and evaporator is used at low pressure applications. So try to remember, both have the same principle. Liquid should get converted to vapor state, but at low pressure we use evaporator, at higher pressure we are going to use boiler. Now let us go for the third case, the condenser. So if you consider a condenser, so condenser, we know that there is a condenser like this. The condenser coil will be like this somewhat. Now steam is entering into the condenser. There is some cooling water here. So this is the cooling water, let us take, or cooling fluid, whatever you want, you can consider. Now steam is entering. So this steam usually enters into this condenser at high pressure and high temperature. High pressure and high temperature. So let us say H1 is the enthalpy with which steam is entering into the condenser here. Now this steam rejects certain amount of heat to the cooling water. So heat is rejected here, and as a result of that, with same pressure, see, in condenser pressure remains constant as far as our applications are concerned. So as far as our application is concerned, here with the same pressure this will be coming out, and the temperature might be same as this temperature or little bit lower. So for this instant, let us say with the same temperature it is coming out, but this will be coming out in the liquid form. Steam enters into the condenser, rejects heat to the surrounding cooling water here, and as a result of that liquid formation takes place, and this liquid will have a lesser enthalpy because heat is rejected. See, this condenser also doesn't do any kind of external work here. So therefore we can say H1 minus the amount of heat rejected, this is equal to H2. So from this, heat rejected Q122 will be equal to H1 minus H2. So this is the expression. So here also we are neglecting the effects of kinetic and potential energies in order to get the expression. So this is the third application. Now let us go for the next application, that is compressor. So you can consider this as air or gas compressor, whatever you want. So this is the compressor, let us say. Into the compressor, let us say air is entering into this compressor with certain velocity C1, and pressure, volume and temperature, all these will be there. Instead of all those, let us say H1 is the enthalpy with which air is entering into this compressor. Now in this compressor, air gets compressed because of the amount of work input that we are giving to the compressor. So we need to supply certain amount of work to the compressor such that certain amount of heat will be rejected to the surroundings, and here the air gets compressed and comes out with a greater pressure and temperature. So the pressure at this point is P1, temperature is T1. At the exit from the compressor, the pressure will be higher and temperature will be higher because of the work addition, and as a result of pressure and temperature rise, there will be increase in the enthalpy to H2, and there will be variation in the velocity to C2. Now if we apply steady flow energy equation for this particular case, neglecting the potential energy components, here we need to use the expression like this: half mc1 square plus h1 minus q122. Why we have considered minus q122 is heat is rejected by this compressor. So heat is rejected by the system, so we need to take negative. This will be equal to half mc2 square plus h2 minus w122. So why we have taken minus 1 to 2 minus w1 to 2 here is work input we are giving to the system. So from this we can write the expression. If we want in terms of work or heat, whatever you want you can write. So this is the expression that we need to consider, and remember the unit conversions here. So all the things, heat, work, everything we are considering enthalpy in terms of joules only. That's why we have written this equation. Suppose if velocities are negligible and isentropic compression takes place, then isentropic compression means we know that heat transferred will be 0 because it will be insulated. Then this equation will be like this: H1 is equal to H2 minus W122. So from this, work done W122 will be equal to H2 minus H1. So the equation reduces like this. So the next component that we have to consider is a turbine. So whatever the turbine, you take gas turbine or steam turbine, anything. So here this equation will almost remain the same. Now see here, there is a turbine like this. So there is a turbine like this. into the turbine, gas or steam is entering with a greater pressure and greater temperature, and as a result of that the enthalpy will be higher. And this gas or steam, when it is usually coming out of the nozzle, it comes out with a greater velocity. Let us say the velocity is C1 here. Now in the turbine, expansion takes place. As a result of that, pressure drops, temperature drops, and as the pressure and temperature are decreasing, enthalpy also decreases, and there will be variation in the velocity to C2. Now here this turbine will develop certain amount of work output as a result of the expansion of the gases or steam over this particular turbine blades, and due to the expansion there might be some amount of heat rejection to the surroundings. So therefore we can write the equation of turbine like this, neglecting potential energy components: half mc1 square plus h1 minus q122. As heat is rejected, we are taking minus q122. This is equal to half mc2 square plus h2 plus work done. Work output we are getting from the turbine. So that is the reason we have got this particular expression. Now suppose if velocities are neglected, and if isentropic expansion takes place, so isentropic expansion means heat transferred to the surroundings will be zero, because this will be perfectly insulated. Then this same equation can be written like this: h1 is equal to h2 plus work done. So from this, the amount of work output that we are going to get will be h1 minus h2. So this is what we are going to get from the turbine. Now let us go for the next component. The next component that we are going to see here is a pump. So when you consider a pump is a device which is usually used to lift water. So let us say from a lower level, let us say at pressure P1 it is there, to a higher level water is needed to be lifted. So then here in order to lift water from a lower level to higher level, we need to supply certain amount of work input to the pump. So that means electrical motor switch that we use in order to lift this water. Suppose if this pump is insulated and there is no heat loss, then what is going to happen is this water initially will have certain enthalpy at inlet, and H2 is the enthalpy at exit. Now neglecting the kinetic energy variation and potential energy variations for the pump, here what is going to happen is H1 is the enthalpy with which water enters the pump. This will be equal to H2 is the velocity with which the water is leaving the pump minus the amount of work input that we are giving. So as work input is given, we need to put minus sign here. So work input here will be equal to H2 minus H1. So this is the formula for work input to the pump. See, as fluid is entering into the system and leaving the system, the amount of work input to the pump can also be written as the specific volume of the fluid multiplied by P2 minus P1. So here we are using VDP work. How we are going to get this VDP work, I'll be explaining shortly to you. Then the next component that we are going to see here is nozzle. So this is very important, nozzle, because most of the times questions were asked from nozzle topic also. See, nozzle is a device to which fluid will be entering with certain velocity C1 and enthalpy H1, and it will be leaving with velocity C2 and enthalpy H2. See what is happening here in the nozzle, as this is insulated adiabatic nozzle, there will be no heat transfer. So H1 is the enthalpy with which the fluid enters the nozzle, and the kinetic energy is half mc1 square. So this will be equal to H2 plus half mc2 square. So here what is happening in the nozzle is, with the drop in enthalpy there will be increase in the velocity, so or increase in the kinetic energy. Now here we can write like this: half m into c2 square minus c1 square is equal to h1 minus h2, which is nothing but the enthalpy drop. So you can also write this equation like this: c2 square minus c1 square by 2 is equal to small h1 minus h2, because mass, if we remove, this capital H1 minus H2 can be written as m into H1 minus H2. So mass gets cancelled on either side, and you can write the nozzle equation like this: C2 square minus C1 square by 2 is equal to H1 minus H2, where the velocity is in meter per second and enthalpy is in joule per kg, not kilojoule per kg. It will be in terms of joule per kg. Suppose if enthalpy is in kilojoule per kg and velocity c is in meter per second, then you should write the expression like this: c2 square minus c1 square by 2000 is equal to h1 minus h2, and from this c2 will be equal to under root of c1 square plus 2000 into h1 minus h2. So this is the exit velocity formula. Now suppose if c1 is negligible, compare it to c2, then c2 will be equal to simply 44.72 root of h1 minus h2. So root of 2000 is 44.72. So from this we are going to get here. Suppose if friction coefficient is given for the nozzle, friction coefficient K is given in the nozzle, then here C2 will be equal to 44.72 under root of K into H1 minus H2. So this is the expression that we need to consider for the nozzle.